So I want to go ahead and get started. So let me just go ahead and premise by saying that this is actually going to be the shortened version of everything that I've researched over the last couple of days. And the reason why is because if I did it, it would be a very, very long video, and I want the purpose of this particular video to be a quick reference point for anyone who needs to get a concise version of what's going on with the Uranium One deal, what's going on with the Clintons, how it relates, how it hasn't been debunked, etc., etc. Now, there will be an elongated version or an extended version, if you will, on my podcast on Stitcher, which I will post in the description below so that you can go to that after the video. I will post the podcast tomorrow morning. That will be my first podcast of the week, and don't forget I will be posting podcasts every single day. Now that will actually contain all of the details of the Uranium One deal that I've found, and it's a lot. It's probably going to be at least an hour and 15-minute long podcast, just because there's so much involved in so many different moving parts that I wanted to put it somewhere so that people would have access to it, but I didn't want to do it on this particular video because I want to give the most concise version of what I found so that it's a little bit more digestible for people who may be new to following it and want to kind of share it with their friends. So I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. My name is Niko House, and I am the host of the political radio show Mikasa Sukasa, which you can find on American Freedom Radio every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. You can also find us obviously here on YouTube and on Stitcher. Also, make sure that you join our One Follow, $1 campaign, where we show the mainstream media that if they will not invest in the truth, then we will invest in those who will. You can do so by clicking on the Patreon link below and donating just $1. Also, make sure that you help us on our road to 10,000. Hashtag 10K, hashtag 10Gs. We're almost there. We're actually a little bit over. Over halfway there. And I think we can hit that 10K mark. Not at the end of this month, but at the end of February. I think that'll be a very reasonable and realistic goal for us. And I would love for you all to help us achieve that. If you can ask anybody in the comment section, you will absolutely not regret subscribing to this page. We're in the business of telling the truth. Nothing but the truth. So make sure you subscribe. So I want to go ahead and get started. As you all know, there has been this ongoing lie that has been being perpetuated by the mainstream media and the establishment media, saying that the Uranium One Clinton deal has been debunked. Is nothing burger. Nobody should be paying attention to it. We need to move on. It's actually Trump we need to be paying attention to. And I'm here today to tell you that is utter bullshit. It is not true. It is a lie. It is, not only is it like a lie, it's not like an accidental lie. It is a lie that, as I have researched over the last few days, I've researched this quite extensively, but some information over the last few days has kind of allowed me to complete my version of kind of tying the circle together and making it complete so I can figure out what the hell is going on. But it was a lie essentially that they perpetuated on purpose, and it looks like a lie that is in fact a cover-up much bigger than many of us originally had thought. So yesterday, as many of you know, there was an indictment that was unsealed by the Department of Justice. And that indictment was for Mark Lambert. Mark Lambert, just a brief description, was in charge of an uranium transportation company and had gotten in trouble for some bribery. And he got 11 counts, actually, of different charges involving bribery, conspiracy to violate the Federal Corruption Act, and then, the Foreign Corruption Act, and also some money laundering. But there was another name, a name that I had actually, I just never heard of the guy before, to be quite blunt. And it was a name that ultimately was going to be the key to tying in all of this together, because I know a lot of people are wondering, as they should be, and not only wondering, but hoping, is this going to eventually get back to the Clintons as we had hoped? Are the unsealed indictments potentially going to get back to the Clintons, the Clinton Foundation, those involved in the Clinton Foundation, those who have assisted the Clintons, people in the government who have assisted this uranium deal? Like, because I mean, it's cool that this guy has gotten arrested and is being indicted, but like, what does that mean to us if no one in the government officially gets indicted, officially gets charged, and officially stands trial for crimes that people like us, who everyday people, would get prosecuted for immediately? Like I said, I'm a veteran. I was a paralegal, but I was a paralegal in an intelligence community. I have family members who are in the intelligence community, and I know, and they know, as well as anyone else who has served in that community knows, if a private accidentally sends one piece of classified information, they're going to Camp Lejeune. There's no question about it. At that point, their court-martial is merely procedure and semantics. They're going to go to jail for it. Now, we've seen, obviously, that Hillary Clinton, apparently the law has changed. And because she showed no intention of breaking the law doesn't apply to her. And I'm here to tell you today, that's not true. And I think that a lot of people feel the same way we do. So it is important to draw, to kind of bring all the pieces together to create the picture that will ultimately lead to, I believe, Clinton indictments, if they have not already been indicted and they're part of the sealed indictments that we are currently, that we know about. And so the name that stood out to me yesterday was Vadim Mikorin. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing his wrong. It's Russian. I'm sorry, people. Okay, Russian is not one of the languages I speak. He was actually in charge of a subsidiary of Russia called Tenex. It's short for something else. I can't pronounce it. Once again, it's Russian, but that's what we know it as, is Tenex. And he was actually indicted on laundering and extortion accounts. Now, Tenex is important, and it was mentioned a lot yesterday in the Justice Department's release, press release. But it kind of, it was mentioned, but people are like, okay, what the hell? What does this have to do with anything? Well, Tenex is actually extremely important, and that is why I'm glad Vadim's and Mikorin's name came up, because it allowed me to draw this conclusion. And we found out that Tenex is actually the domestic sales arm of Uranium One. So that means Vadim, who has been brought up in all of these charges, actually works directly for Uranium One. In case you're wondering, yes, he's Russian. Tenex is a Russian subsidiary, located in Maryland. They're in this country, but they work for the Russians. Now, from 2009 to 2012, he actually extorted lobbyists. And it's funny enough because like Vadim in the grand scheme of things, like Mikorin is actually like a small fish. But it's kind of funny because if you've ever seen any gangster movie whatsoever, drug movie or anything like that, it's always the small guy who does something stupid and like barbaric and is sloppy, and he gets caught, and that's kind of what starts the domino effect of us getting to the big fish. And that's essentially what we're seeing right now. Now, he committed a federal crime. He committed several counts of federal crimes. Like I said, if you want to know to the extent of how many crimes he committed, if you want to go to the podcast tomorrow, I'll post a link in the description. All that stuff will be in there. But he committed a federal crime and was only given 48 months, in which he actually just started serving, which is kind of crazy because he actually got prosecuted like 3 years ago. But he just started serving the 48 months. Now, as federal crimes go, now we know that people get charged for marijuana and get longer than 2 years, which obviously means that we can use our common sense to conclude that Mikorin struck a deal. That's the only way that a Russian agent dealing with uranium, extorting to kind of corner the uranium market, if you will, that's the only way he gets 48 months. But he probably did cop a plea deal, and the reason we can kind of figure this out is because of who goes down next, which I'll go to in a second. Now, the Hill actually, one of the few times they've reported something accurately in the last couple of years, the Hill reported that in October 2017, that the Obama administration knew about Mikarin's corrupt practices. They knew, of course, about the fact that 10X, which Mikarin was in charge of, and the fact that they were in charge of the domestic sales involving Uranium One. He knew of all those criminal practices. They knew about Mikarin being in charge of 10X, and that 10X was in charge of those sales for Uranium One, but they actually did nothing about it. They did nothing about it. In fact, they totally ignored it, which plays a big part going forward. Now, why is Mikarin's arrest so important? Remember, I said he only got 48 months from multiple counts of federal crimes. Mark Lambert, who was the gentleman who was indicted yesterday, his indictment was important for two reasons. One, he is still in charge of the transportation of the uranium that belonged to 10X, which, as you know, belonged to Uranium One. Now, Lambert is fighting the charges, but the second important thing about him being indicted is that his indictment, for some reason, we don't know why, but his indictment was sealed. I don't understand why it would be sealed. I wouldn't have understood why it had been sealed, because it seems like if in a vacuum that, like, yeah, he just did some corruption. If you saw, he had 11 counts involving fraud, corruption, wire fraud, like fraud in wire fraud, by the way, as in wire fraud. So he was wire fraud, corruption, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act violations, and money laundering, which once again, in a vacuum, it just seems like he was trying to do whatever he could to get a good contract, which is okay. Like, I mean, it's not okay, but I'm saying which seems like not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of Uranium One. But in fact it is, because what was briefly mentioned in the press release yesterday, but was not elaborated on, was that his co-president pleaded guilty and is awaiting his sentence. But he pleaded guilty in 2015. He's still awaiting his sentence. Now, I don't really understand why someone would plead guilty in 2015, but is still awaiting their sentence. I'm not exactly sure what they're waiting for. Once again, if he pleaded guilty, he knew, I mean, he was a co-president. He wasn't just the president, or he wasn't Mark Lambert wasn't the president and then this guy was the vice president. They were both co-presidents working side by side. However, he pleaded guilty, but Mark Lambert plans on fighting the charges. Now, if he pleads guilty, clearly he's going to get a deal, right? Because once again, this isn't about Mark Lambert. It's not even about his co-president. It's not even about Mikarin. But how do you get the big fish? Process of elimination. Now, the only way you can also get the big fish is if the indictments are sealed, because otherwise people will start scrambling, destroying things. We all know how that goes, right? Sometimes email servers just come up destroyed and set on fire. So we know exactly how that goes. Now, like I said, the co-president has not had his sentence executed yet. And I'm sure the reason has to do, I should say, with the fact that there's the sealed indictments that came up seemingly out of nowhere a few months back. Now, a lot of these indictments, sealed indictments, a lot of people considered those sealed indictments conspiracy theory, like, which, I mean, at the time, I guess it kind of made sense. I would never kind of chalk something up to conspiracy unless someone proved that at this point, right? Given everything that we've seen. But those sealed indictments turned out to, in fact, be true. Like, there were people who have been indicted already. Not like they're waiting to be indicted. They're already indicted, which means they're already being charged with something. It just has not come out into the public yet. Now, if he had not served his sentence, like I said, and he pleaded guilty, there's no other reason for them to wait unless he pleaded guilty and they didn't want anybody to know he pleaded guilty so that he can continue doing whatever he was doing behind the scenes as part of his plea bargain, which eventually led to the sealed indictments that we currently see, and probably some of the unsealed indictments that are coming up forward. Now, all in all, now Mark's company facilitated the sale of all of the 10x uranium and did whatever they had to in order to maintain that exclusive contract, because 10x cannot go through anybody else, because they likely knew that it was going to be worth a lot of money as they expanded through the US, because, well, you'll see why in a second. Now enter Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, the news constantly portrayed, excuse me, let me start. Bill Clinton's coming in a second, but we got a premise with this. The news constantly portrayed the uranium mining company as a Canada-based company, but it was a deceitful tactic. And I'm sure you all can remember that's one of the main things that the establishment media tries to use to say that Hillary Clinton was not involved in the transaction at all, that it's not really involving Russia, it's not a big deal, because they keep trying to say the Canadian mining company, but that's actually not true. It's just kind of like a tactic that was used to purposely dissuade people from believing the truth, and that truth is that, contrary to popular belief, Rostratum, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but Rostratum, which is the company that they were referring to, was in fact working directly for the Kremlin. This has been well documented. I mean, clearly, you see all the Russian people involved in this situation, and the people who are in charge of it are Russian. It's not really hard to make that conclusion, but they know that most people are not going to go out of their way to do that research. Now, we all know about, and it's widely talked about, the $500,000 speech that Bill Clinton gave in Russia to the investment bank that was there after the Uranium One deal. That's probably one of the most talked about instances of quid pro quo that we see in the media right now. But what is often not talked about is that $2.35 million given to the Clinton Foundation by the chairman of Uranium One over the course of 2009 to 2013. Now, what are the significance of those dates? Obviously, January 2009 is whenever around the time Hillary Clinton became the Secretary of State. Obviously, through 2013, which is around the time that she stopped. She actually stopped being Secretary of State officially, I believe, in 2014. But obviously, she started ramping down in 2013. And with almost pinpoint accuracy, essentially, that is when Clinton took over the State Department. So with all these donations, however, as most of you know, were not disclosed. The $500,000 speech was disclosed, but it wasn't really talked about. But the $2.35 million was absolutely not disclosed at all whatsoever. Now, why is that a big deal? That's a big deal because Hillary Clinton did, in fact, strike a deal with an agreement, I should say, with the Obama administration in the form of a written memorandum saying that they would disclose all foreign donations to the Clinton Foundation. Now, Hillary's Russian ambassador actually claimed to know absolutely nothing about the Uranium One deal, and we're going to come back to that later and explain why that's so important. But Bill actually flew to Kazakhstan around this same time period, around 2009, a little bit before, with Mr. Giustra, butchering his name too, but his name is Mr. Giustra, and he assisted in the acquisition of some uranium deposits in exchange for a propaganda coup campaign for the dictator of Kazakhstan, for him to get reelected, despite his horrible record on human rights. Now, I don't even want to really go into detail about why that's so wrong, but essentially, Bill worked with this Canadian financier and excuse me, the person who was in charge of a uranium mining company called Eurasia. Now, excuse me. Obviously, as you could probably guess, shortly after that, he received a lot of money from the guy, but not before. He received approximately 31.5 million, and then that same gentleman did a fundraising venture for Bill Clinton, where he personally pledged $100 million to the foundation, and then from others, they raised $16 million in that same fundraiser. Now, before that happened, however, Clinton actually helped that same man acquire a South African uranium mining company, and that uranium mining company was called, you guessed it, Uranium One. So that means Bill Clinton was actually, the Clintons in general, were actually directly involved in the same company they're claiming they knew absolutely nothing about their dealings whatsoever. Bill Clinton flew to Kazakhstan with this guy who owns a huge share in this company and facilitated its purchase, but they know nothing about anything Uranium One. The moment that they claim, here's the issue, and this is like a little brief aside. This is the issue with the Clintons. If they would stop being so absolute in their, their claims, like, oh, we knew absolutely nothing about that. What are you talking about? We weren't even there. Then people would probably kind of maybe believe them more. People would stop digging deeper if they would say, oh, that was our fault. We were actually just being careless. If I would have known to the extent of how much Russia was going to be involved in this uranium deal, then we probably would not have assisted it. We were just trying to settle relations, rocky relations with Russia by allowing them to participate more in our energy, the economics of our energy. That would be a little bit, more believable. I would even believe that at a point back then. But for you to tell me that you're a Secretary of State and your husband flew with this guy, this guy who literally then gave a propaganda coup campaign, like gave him all the information and helped facilitate it with this dictator to get uranium deposits, and then help this same guy buy Uranium One. And then later on, we found out that this same company was purchased by Russians, and now with Russians, like, we still have weird relations with Russians. We did at that time still, because of them invading Crimea and all that good stuff. So why are you going to lie to the American people and try and pretend that you know absolutely nothing about it? At least pretend, like, at least sell us the bullshit. If you just give us the bullshit, then likely we're not going to buy it because we're going to think it's bullshit. If you sell it to us, though, negotiate the price a little bit. We didn't know about all of it, but we knew about a little bit of it. That would probably be a little bit smarter in my humble opinion. But hey, what do I know? Anyway, moving on. So, like I said, after Bill helped facilitate the purchase of the Kazakh deposit for this gentleman, Mr. Gustra, and then helped Mr. Gustra buy Uranium One from which was based in South Africa. He then, like I said, got 31.5 million undisclosed, and then 100 million donated undisclosed as well. In 2009, or around that time period, Uranium One actually had a significant drop in its stocks, and it was about 40% actually. Now, this same company that Bill Clinton and helped his friends purchase was about to go under. So, given our history of the Clintons, we know our history of the Clintons. We know that he's not just going to let it go down, because he is now pretty much all but financially invested in the success of this company, but more so, and probably more importantly, the success of these people who have helped facilitate millions of dollars into his foundation through various means, and that chairman of Uranium One donated a lot of money to the Clinton Foundation, and a lot of other people from Uranium One donated a lot of undisclosed money to the Clinton Foundation. So it is now Bill Clinton's job to make sure they don't die. Now, what is the best way to either make sure they don't die or make sure they keep their money? Well, the same thing that you see media companies and all other types of companies do all the time. Same thing that happened with T-Mobile, same thing that happened with Sprint. You let someone who is bigger buy you. However, you can't just do that without government approval in the United States. Like, it's illegal. They actually have a group of people who are supposed to do that. It's actually called the committee. I'm gonna tell you exactly what the committee's called. Give me a second. Excuse me. Okay, so the committee is actually called Committee for Foreign Investments. There you go. It's called the Committee for Foreign Investments, and it includes, for those of you people who keep saying, "Oh, it takes so many people to approve this," it does. That part is true. It takes the Department of State, the Department of Treasury, the Secretary of Defense, not all the departments, but the secretaries of those departments, the Attorney General, and the Department of Energy and Commerce to approve deals such as those. But as WikiLeaks has pointed out to us, all of those people were Clinton people. If you want a brief example of that, Eric Holder was actually one of the people who was on that committee. One of the people who claimed to know nothing about what was going on with the uranium deal, but he was on the committee to approve the deal. Now, who was Eric Holder? Eric Holder was actually the first black U.S. attorney who was appointed by none other than Bill Clinton. So what would you possibly do for the person who made you the first black male to ever be appointed as a U.S. attorney? I don't know. Maybe help him out a little bit. Maybe, look the other way, not ask any questions. This is the Attorney General, people, saying that he was unaware of criminal activity going on with this deal. Eric Holder is also the first black Attorney General as well. He was appointed by Barack Obama before Loretta Lynch was then succeeded him. So that's just a small example of the people that Bill Clinton, that had worked for Bill Clinton in the past, that worked for the Obama administration, and that essentially worked at some point for either Hillary, Bill, or Obama. So it's easy to see how people could easily just look the other way, right? So yes, in essence, they are correct. It did take several people to look the other way. However, all of the people in the executive branch of the United States government at that time, including who was at one point Obama's chief of staff, John Podesta, all of them were Clinton people, as WikiLeaks had revealed previously. So, excuse me. So, one of the reasons that the uranium stocks had dropped was because this had to do with the arrest of, I don't want to mess up his name, but Zakishev. Zakishev. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that right. Don't make fun of me. But he was in charge of at least one of the uranium deposits that Uranium One owned in Kazakhstan. So it turned out that WikiLeaks, a long time ago, revealed that this man was part of a power play by Russia to gain mass control of the uranium of Kazakhstan. So Bill Clinton accidentally facilitated Russia trying to get nuclear power in the middle of what we did not know was going on, but now we know, in the middle of a Cold War that's been going on with Russia that we were totally unaware of, which kind of explains a lot, right? So my ultimate conclusion with all of this is that Uranium One was initially owned by the very man who Bill Clinton helped. It was going under, and even after all that help from Bill Clinton in the United States government, and they needed someone to ensure that they did not lose all the money that went into the purchase of Uranium One before the company went under completely. So Rosatom took it over. Rosatom, once again, for those of you who don't know, is the Kremlin-backed Canadian company. That's the one who bought Uranium One. That's why it's so important. That's why it's been such a big deal. That's like insane. That's insane because he works directly for the Kremlin. Like he's and really before he never really tried to hide it. So Rosatom was the one who ended up ultimately taking it over, but they could not do so without approval. They are not allowed to do it without approval from the United States government. Not at all, no way, no how. So this wasn't a deal that started like out of nowhere. This was a deal that started really around 2009 and had been an ongoing situation. But this ongoing situation, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, the State Department, and all those government officials who were involved totally ignored. And this is not by my account. This is as reported in The Hill. It's been reported in the New York Times, and these are from FBI officials and other officials from the Justice Department. So this was widely ignored by the Obama administration, and that's a huge problem. That's a huge hiccup. Now, if you can't really tell at this point, Bill and Hillary seem to have used their government connections to make it happen, to make the deal happen. I mean, so because the people, they already had a long-standing history of helping them, and those people donated hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that Bill and Hillary would forever be in their favor. Because the moment they help them, it doesn't work if you help me. It's cool that I gave you money and I just really got another 100 million for you. But it doesn't help me if my company goes over because some stupid ass got caught. Or goes under, not over, because some stupid ass got caught. Because guess what? If I go under, if I am broke, if I can't make money, then I'm bringing your ass down with me. So figure it out. So for fear of being ousted as traitors, they immediately started to shift blame during the election. They started talking about the Russian government because the intelligence community was clearly closing in and deals were clearly being struck behind closed doors via various criminal cases like the one we saw yesterday. So essentially, it's insane to think that this has been debunked. Literally, this is not an exaggeration. Hundreds of millions of dollars was donated to the Clinton Foundation from the chairperson of Uranium One. Literally, Bill Clinton helped facilitate the purchase of Uranium One. This is not an exaggeration. This is not speculation. This is not conspiracy. This is a fact. We are currently seeing, not only are we currently seeing, but we have seen people committing multiple counts of federal charges, federal crimes, including money laundering, including a violation of the the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is like some of these crimes are like minimum 2 to 3 year sentences. One count of them. And people are walking off with plea deals. Indictments are becoming unsealed. And so at that point, any person with any amount of common sense or objectivity can tell that this is a domino effect. And it is a domino effect that actually really started in 2014 and 2015. But what it appears to look like, and this part is my opinion, what it appears to look like is that it was being slowed down on purpose by the Obama administration, because what would have happened is if Hillary Clinton would have won eventually, this would have never gotten back to her. A lot of these cases would perhaps never have gotten brought up in federal court. If they would have gotten brought up in federal court, you know, a lot more Democrats would be in office. A lot more, you know, Hillary Clinton would be appointing the Supreme Court judges. And so all of a sudden, she would be appointing the U.S. District Attorney as well, by the way. Not the USDA, but the U.S. Attorney, of Columbia. Of the District of Columbia. So a lot of the people who would either be trying these cases or introducing these cases or being involved in these cases would be able to walk free or have control over who and who isn't prosecuted. But my thing is, Mark Lambert was indicted, and his indictment was unsealed yesterday. They couldn't do that without the cooperation of his co-president, who pleaded guilty literally years before that, but was not put in jail or anything yet. Now, why would that be? Oh, maybe because he copped a plea? For those of you who are not from the hood and don't understand what copping a plea means, this is the very definition of what you don't do in the hood. Because if you did a bunch of crimes and somehow you're out in 6 months, everybody in the hood knows you snitched. Okay? That's exactly what we're seeing happening. Now, how did they know that the co-president was involved? How did they know that the co-presidents, Mark Lambert and his partner, were involved? Because Mikoyan messed up by extorting people. Mikoyan was in charge of 10X, which is the Russian subsidiary in charge of all of the nuclear arrangements in the United States. And the company that Mark Lambert was in charge of was the one who dispersed all of the nuclear material across the country and abroad. Now, why would he fight so desperately to keep those contracts? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because he damn sure knew that they were going to have a monopoly, really, on the transportation of Russian nuclear material that was currently in the process of being bought, being distributed, with deals being struck by the government. And by the way, Mikoyan was only here by way of the United States government, so they knew he was here. They were the ones who allowed him to be here specifically for that. He had to get an agreement to do so. 10X, 10X, the company, was only here because they went through the government to do so. So, the only reason that you say you don't know anything whatsoever is because you don't want to talk about it for fear that it can be used against you later on. For all we know, because understand something, by the way, you can be a felon and still run for office and still hold office and still win office. You just can't vote, which is really weird. But you can be a felon and run. So for all we know, these sealed indictments may have been recently announced, but these sealed indictments could have taken place, which is why Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, hell, and even Obama, for fear of things getting back to him and him looking neglectful, they could have went all in on Hillary Clinton, specifically because there were a lot of players in place who were going to feel the heat from this Uranium One deal. This is why this is where Russiagate came from, essentially. This is why Russiagate is a thing. It didn't come out of nowhere. We were trying to better relations with Russia. Russia was in the middle of a power play for uranium because their uranium deposits are not enough to help power their country. It wasn't about like a nuclear war, but it was in fact an energy race. It was another Cold War that we were in the middle of, that many of us were just very, very much so unaware of. Now, what happens when you're in the middle of a Cold War with Russia, who we just finished the Cold War with, and behind closed doors, your husband is facilitating the sale of 20% of our uranium to Russia? Mind you, Russia was also in the process of getting uranium, strong arming really uranium from Kazakhstan. They were making international power plays literally everywhere. And Bill Clinton seemed to be in every single place, including Russia at one point, that Russia had its hands in. In Kazakhstan, in Russia, in Kazakhstan for the facilitation of the propaganda, the propaganda coup of that dictator. In Russia, receiving that $500,000 for the speech with the investment bank after the purchase of Uranium 1. Obviously, with one of the majority shareholders of Uranium 1, who gave him the $100 million, and then the $32 million, and then the $2.35 million, along with all the other people who donated to the Clinton Foundation from Uranium 1. And during all this, Hillary Clinton claimed she had no idea what was going on. And some of you are crazy enough to believe that. That's common sense. This is I mean, I don't want to say it's common sense, but after you know the information, it's common sense, people. If you haven't noticed, everyone from the bottom to the top involved in this deal is going to get in trouble, and there are already 3 people in. And if you can't tell, like, the order that they're going, the pecking order, if you will, because that's literally what's happening. They went after the person who initiated the contact with the uranium in Russia, and started and was in charge of the relationship there with the United States and Russia and uranium. He's gone. He's in jail. If you want to look up his indictment, actually, I'll post it. I have all the links. I'll post them under this on the video description. They got him. Then they have the person who was in charge of transporting all of the uranium here and abroad. They got both of them. So, and they got the person who was linked to Uranium 1 already, that was strong arming, that was essentially not strong arming, was facilitating and in charge of some of the uranium in Kazakhstan, and it turned out this guy was part of a Russian power play. So now you know where the Russiagate story originated. It came from the fact that Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and a lot of other people, especially people in the Obama administration, not only his first term, but in his second term as well, may end up in prison. Now, I want to look up the exact definition of treason, because there's a good possibility that they could get prosecuted for that. There's a very good possibility. Give me 1 second. This is Merriam-Webster, but not that I think they're the most reliable, but we're just going to go with the basic definition of treason. So the offense of attempting to overt acts to overthrow the government of the state to which the offender owes allegiance, or to kill or personally injure the sovereign or the sovereign's family, or betrayal of trust, because that is actually probably the more logical definition of treason. So yeah, and I would like to I'm going to talk to Liz or Jared to try to have them on to talk about what do they believe would be the kind of like the minimum requirement for treason to be tried and in charge with treason, because we were in fact in the middle of a Cold War, and they were aware of this, but they were not making it a big deal. They weren't making it well known because they didn't want to freak anybody out. They didn't want essentially everybody to know that we were really on a whole nother war front, but just in a different way outside of Iraq and Afghanistan. So there you have it. I appreciate everybody checking out the video. Like I said, this is just the shortened version of what I wanted to do. However, I will post a link to my Stitcher podcast in the description below. Then you can check it out. Check out the longer version with more details, more information there. And but this is the one I would love for you all to share with your friends, your family, anybody who is like, oh yeah, it's been debunked. It's been debunked. It's not been debunked, and it's about to come out that it has not been debunked in a very, very, very major way. Okay, so please share this, like and subscribe if you like what you heard, or even if you didn't necessarily like it, but you know what I mean. Please like, subscribe, donate to that one follow $1 campaign, and always remember, ladies and gentlemen, find your balance. Peace. Hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like that segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Also, you can help us upgrade the studio and take this show on the road to cover the on-the-ground politics that you love by clicking on that GoFundMe link in the description and donating literally anything. Anything helps. Also, you can follow us on Rockfin, on Twitter, and on Facebook as well. And hey, more than anything else, people, always remember, find your balance. Peace.